Thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. Please like and subscribe, and see you in the next one. Thanks.